Welcome to the Bos Meadery and Roots chocolate and mead pairing. I'm Colleen Bos with Bos Meadery. I'm the owner and head mead maker, and my companion today is.
I'm Lisa Nelson, owner and chief chocolate officer for Roots Chocolates located in Wisconsin Dells.
Thanks, Lisa. Today we're going to go through, we're going to talk about ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about the products we make, how the mead is made, how the chocolate is made, and tell you a little bit about our background, the history of the business, but just a little bit. And then we're going to get into the fun part, and we're going to go through with you a mead and chocolate pairing. And so for this process, you will have received 4 bottles of mead, a box of chocolates with 4 different flavors in them, and you should have a tasting sheet that looks like this. Do you want to talk about the tasting sheet, Lisa?
Absolutely. The pairing sheet discusses the 4 meads that we're going to be tasting and the 4 chocolates that we're going to be tasting. You'll read it sample 1, sample 2, sample 3, and sample 4. You'll notice that there are 4 little circles on the bottom of the tasting sheet. That's for you to put your chocolates on. And then you can put your mead in whatever glasses that you would like to taste with. Pretty simple.
Perfect. So we've done the research, we've done the hard research, the quality assurance that it takes to figure out which chocolates and which meads really go well together and really enhance each other. And so having put in all that hard work, we are pretty excited to actually have you see what these flavors are. And we'll talk a little bit about why we choose to pair the meads and the chocolates together that we do, and what we're hoping to get out of that as we go through the process. But to start out with, we wanted to share a little bit about our businesses and what we do. Lisa, do you want to start us off with that?
Absolutely. Hopefully you can see my background. This is what I call the 1901 building. And it's a building that Colleen and I have actually done some mead and chocolate pairings on my farm. I'm the 4th generation owner of my family farm, but I also happen to make chocolates right here on the farm. Anything that we can grow, any value added ingredients, fruits, herbs, vegetables are all fair game for me to use. And that does include honey from our farm beehives.
It's very cool. End to end, you can get what you need for chocolate. Well, I'm Colleen Bos, and we started Bos Meadery in 2012. And our goal was to make dry and sparkling meads because there were a lot of meads on the market, but most of them were fairly sweet. And I thought it would be nice to give people an alternative, something that I felt might pair a little bit better with food. And my secondary goal, which I think is actually very similar to Lisa's, was to celebrate the local landscape, celebrate what we make here in Wisconsin. And so we use all Wisconsin honey, and we use as many ingredients from the state of Wisconsin or regionally from the upper Midwest as we possibly can. So for example, one of the first meads you're gonna taste is the Ace of Cascades, and we get our hops from farms in Wisconsin. The second one you'll taste is Hammer Smash Cherry, and we actually get the cherries from Door County here in Wisconsin. So as much as we can, where it makes sense, we try to get things locally. Local is definitely a big emphasis for both of us. But before we dive into the tasting, I did also want to provide just a little snapshot of mead history, because honestly, lots of people don't necessarily know what mead is or what its long and storied background is. So mead is just fermented honey, water, honey, and yeast. So just like wine is fermented grapes and beer is fermented barley, mead is what you get when you ferment honey. And it turns out that it's actually the world's oldest fermented beverage. Some of the earliest archaeological evidence goes back to about 6000 BC in China. And it was a highly prized beverage in ancient Egypt, ancient Rome. Certainly it's well known to be a part of Viking lore. But it's all these ancient places all across the world that discovered early on that they could ferment honey and turn it into a tasty beverage. But as human beings settled down and started to get better and better at farming and cultivating crops, more often you saw beer or wine because barley and grapes are a bit easier to cultivate than beehives, a little less dangerous. And so over time, mead really becomes more rare and wine and beer become much more common. And it's not until about the 20th century when the craft brew revolution in the US caused people to start playing around with beverages, making craft beer, making local beer. More local wineries started to pop up, cideries, liquor or distilleries. And also, craft meaderies are now on the rise in the United States. It is the fastest growing market segment of the beverage industry in the US. So that's just a little snapshot of some of the background, some of the history of mead making. Lisa, did you want to add anything about chocolate?
I'll add a little bit more. I think a lot of people don't know that chocolate is actually a fermented food as well. And I think that's why the mead and chocolate are such a great pairing. It goes well because they're fermented. When the beans are picked at country of origin, they're put in boxes, and that's where they ferment anywhere 3 to 5 days, depends upon the weather. And it has a great history of, well, I would say that the Aztecs are credited with chocolate. They used to use it as medicine. They used to use it as money. So I love working with it. It has its own intricacies, and certainly, just like making mead, it has its own intricacies. And I just have to say that I love doing pairings with Colleen because I don't know, we've done this, what, 5 or 6 times now, maybe more. It feels
We
like
have,
we're
but apparently I'm still, we have done it so often, but I'm still learning things.
Absolutely. All the chocolate that I make, I do bean to bar and I do truffles. When I make my truffles, those are not made from the bean, but any chocolate bars that I make are craft chocolate bars made from just cacao beans that I source mainly from Central and South America. Some of you may have heard there's been a lot of tragedy with hurricanes and what going on there. And some of the regions where I've been in Nicaragua have actually been now hurt by the hurricanes. So when we can travel again, I want to get down there and see how everybody's doing.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing to look forward to these days, and always good to think about the people around us that we're going to get the chance to hang out with. But for today, part of the reason we've provided this tasting experience is the hope that hopefully you can sit down with someone you care about and share it. You could possibly, give this gift to somebody else if you really enjoy it, and hopefully it's a way to build community, even though we're all staying at home and staying safe.
Awesome.
Shall we dive into our first?
I'm thirsty, so I think we should get started.
And I'm a little hungry.
I think maybe just to tell people about, we've introduced the tasting sheet, but the tasting itself, as we've done in the past, I really like to taste the mead first, and then I like to taste the chocolate, and then I like to taste the mead again, and then the chocolate. It certainly is interesting how it changes on your palate, and that will be some of the things that we discuss. Also, between each tasting, we recommend that you cleanse your palate somehow. I like to drink a little water. I also like to use unsalted crackers or something that doesn't have a lot of flavor that will reflect on your palate and change the flavor of what you're tasting between the chocolate and the mead. So keep that in mind when you're tasting, and certainly take notes. And at the end, we'll let you know if you have questions. You're welcome to contact either one of us. Let's get started.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Especially because I'm going to talk a little bit about the first mead. The first mead that we're going to be tasting is the Ace of Cascades. It is a sparkling mead, and it's also what we refer to as a session mead. Meads often are around 12% alcohol, but we make some that are about 6.5% alcohol, because we found that a lot of the people who enjoy our mead are craft beer drinkers, and they're not used to drinking something that's 12%. So we quickly, after we opened our tasting room, realized there was some value in some lower octane meads. So the Ace of Cascades is just a very simple brew of water, honey, and yeast, and then we infuse Willamette and Cascade hops into them that we have gotten from a local Wisconsin farm. And we let the hop floralness come through into the mead, but it doesn't really bring along with it the kind of bitterness that you get from the hops in an IPA, for example. It's a gentle botanical experience. But there's still a little part of your brain that thinks a little bit about beer because you're getting some of that hoppy flavor, which is why we thought this might be a nice pairing. Do you want to talk about the chocolate?
Absolutely. Beer Naked. It is, it's one of the truffles that I've had in my line for years, but I've changed up the beers that I use. I always favor a stout or a porter or something on the dark side because it just tastes so good in chocolate. But I now have a favorite, and that would be Delta Brew Labs Porter. It just had, it already has these lovely chocolate notes to it that I really like. And Delta is also in Madison because, you know, whenever we can support local and buy local ingredients, just like you, we want to do that. And it's kind of rich, but I would say the beer itself is more of a medium body, full flavor. That full flavor, those chocolate notes go really well with the dark chocolate center. So we've got the truffle center with the beer in it, and then the dark chocolate coating, the hard coating shell on the outside of the truffle, and then some pretzels sprinkled on top just for a little bit of texture. So let's go ahead and try this one. I really like it. And the mead, it's so beautiful and clear. I love it. I mean, it almost is clear like water. Just lovely.
Yeah, there's just a little hint of like that honey color and a little bit of maybe just the slightest tinge of green from the hops. But that's one of the reasons why, if you haven't poured your stuff yet, or all of your samples out for yourself yet, I recommend a clear glass so that as you go through this, you can really stop and appreciate all the colors that are there.
The nose is really nice on this too, Colleen. I love. It's almost like first pick for me is almost floral in a
Yes.
way. From maybe, I don't know, maybe that's coming from the hops.
I think it's both the flowers coming through. This is made with a wildflower honey. So
Okay.
there's probably some floral notes coming through from the honey itself. And one of the nice things about the hops and the way that we use them is that they're so light, they don't battle, they don't get in the way of that honey, that floralness at all. Instead, they just add this nice, I get slightly grassy botanical flavor.
A little bit, yeah. And the effervescence of the bubbles, I love that. Do you have a recommended way of actually tasting the mead? You know, do you just throw it down or do you swish it around in your mouth? What do you recommend?
Well, I'm going to say two things about that. I'll tell you how I like to approach the mead, but I'll also tell you there's no wrong way to drink mead. But the way I approach it, I think of it in 4 steps. I want to see what it looks like. I want to inhale the aroma and appreciate what that's like. Sometimes it matches up to the flavor that you taste, and sometimes it's a little bit different. It's nice to pay attention to what you get on the nose and then what you actually taste. And then I like to take a small sip at first and kind of inhale a little bit as I bring it in, and then feel how it impacts different parts of my tongue, from the tip to the middle of my palate all the way to the back. It sometimes changes. I get a little more brightness, a little bit more of the botanical on the tip of my tongue, and I feel like I pick up on a little bit more of the sweetness and maybe a little bit more of the bitterness in the hops at the back of my palate. That's just me. You may experience it differently. I once went to a tasting in France. I felt very fortunate in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And the woman who led us through that tasting would stop people and say, no, that is wrong. In the way that they were sipping the wine. And I thought, oh, I mean, I get it. There's maybe better and worse ways to drink
I
wine.
love it.
But she was her name was Julie, and she would just shut people down and say, no. So I like to take the opposite approach. You can do it however you want, but now I have given you the 4 steps that I consider. It's see, sniff, sip, savor. And the savor part includes finally getting to the chocolate.
Absolutely. And I kind of agree with your steps as well. I think people should, I mean, you eat with your eyes, you eat with your nose, you eat with your mouth. I'll use all of your senses when you're tasting this. Now, when you just smell the chocolate without biting into it, you're not going to smell beer or anything like that. You're just really getting the outside of the dark chocolate. But when you bite into the chocolate, don't throw it down. I just recommend taking a quarter of it, no more than a half bite. And then once you do that, now I can taste them. I mean, this is a beautiful, I can't tell you how much I love the porter with inside this truffle. But then, just like Colleen said, it might taste different from the front of your tongue to the back of your tongue. You don't want to just swallow the truffle down. You want it to melt, wallow around in your mouth a little bit, push it up to the roof of your mouth, and then just enjoy it melting as you finish it. And give the truffle a smell while you're chewing on it. And once you have just a little bit of chocolate left in your mouth and you've swallowed most of it, then I recommend trying the mead. So let's do that.
And I think what you'll find, this is what I find, is that my second experience of the mead is a little bit different. The chocolate leads me in a different direction, but I find this very harmonious. And in this case, we don't have 2 flavors, despite some common elements, beer and hops, that really on their own taste alike at all. But when they come together, I get a little bit more out of each of them. And in part, I think for me, right away, what I got was an enhanced sense of the richness of the chocolate as I brought the mead in. And then with the mead, I think I enjoyed even more kind of the refreshing botanical note that then complements that deeper, darker chocolate. I think they balance each other.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love how it enriches the mead. It just, what I get more botanicals out of it, the finish. You know, if I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth, I feel almost just a little bit of grassiness or herbs, something, something else is coming out of there. Now, if you taste the chocolate again and the mead again, that cocoa fat it's coating your tongue a little bit. So that's what's affecting your taste buds. And when you mix it with the mead, then you'll get something a little bit different. The mead might taste, different like it does to us, but everybody's experience can be a little bit different. We're all different human beings. And, but I do love, providing our expertise and hope people have a great experience as well.
Yeah. And I mean, biologically, literally everyone tastes things differently. But if you pay attention, if you start to build up a vocabulary and think about what it is that you're tasting, you'll find over time that you're just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more fluent. If you're sitting around with a table of people and somebody asks you to comment on the flavor of the drink they just gave you, you've got like a toolkit in your head of flavors that you've had before and what you thought about them. But in this case, what I really like about it from the mead maker's perspective is that I love this mead. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody right now, this is my favorite child. This is the one that I like best. But I know that it's a very delicate flavor. People sometimes are like, yeah, that's nice, light, crisp. And it is all those things. But when I drink a sip of it after having that chocolate, it's a bolder drink. It's a bolder flavor that comes out. And I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I love the delicateness of it. It's just, and like I said, the chocolate coats your tongue, and when you taste it again, now they're kind of enhancing each other. And I love that about it.
Mhm.
And don't forget to cleanse your palate in between your tastes with a unsalted cracker or some water. Give your palate a little bit of a rest before you move on.
Yeah, one last comment. I think for me, when I eat one of those beer nakeds on their own, much like with the Ace of Cascades, I tend to think of it as, in some ways, a simpler, more straightforward chocolate. As I eat it after having some of the mead and I'm really thinking about it, it's like all this bold lushness comes through, and I can taste that porter, and the elements just become magnified. So I think the benefit of this pairing is that these are not two exactly similar flavors to start with, and yet they really play off each other in a way that highlights the strengths of each.
That's the fun part, don't you think, Colleen?
It really is. It really is. It's great. And I have to be honest, when we first started these, I really didn't know how chocolate and mead were going to play together. And I have become such a fan.
And I so enjoy doing these pairings with you.
Yes.
Um, I do
So,
want to make a note just from an allergy perspective in case anybody has questions.
oh,
I'll mention that the beer, it has pretzels on top and it's beer. So if you have any kind of like a wheat allergy, this would contain wheat. So just bear that in mind in case you have some allergies.
yeah. So this mead, I don't think is going to hit any allergy buttons because it is just honey, water, yeast, and hops. But if you know you have a hop allergy, definitely be careful. And I think an important thing to mention about all the meads that we're going to taste today is that they're all gluten-free. And I know gluten is often a big concern for people these days. So this is the gift you can get for your friend who is gluten-free.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you cleansed your palate yet? Are you ready to move on to the next
Oh,
one?
I'm ready. I mean, this next one is, we've done this pairing before and people love
Yeah,
it.
this is really a nice one. And we're all excited for you all you can tell our enthusiasm because we really want to share our respective arts with both of you. And we're excited for you to taste, but we're also excited to get feedback from you on how you enjoyed the pairing. And that only helps us. If you tasted something totally different than what we tasted, we still like to hear those kind of things because we learn every time we do a pairing, we learn more. So that's one of the fun parts of working together and collaborating together.
Absolutely.
What's our next mead?
All right. The next mead is what I will call the Bos Meadery flagship. It is called Hammer Smashed Cherry. I'm not sure on the camera, the pale rosy color is coming through in this one very well. We'll see if it shows up better on your screen. But the Hammer Smashed Cherry is another what I call session mead. Oh, you know what? I leaped ahead. I went to the wrong one, didn't I?
I was just going to interrupt you and say, wait, I think we're only on the second sample. How much of that mead were you drinking?
Well, I did purposefully pour a little heavy.
Yeah, I think we're just on number 2 right now.
All right, we'll go. Okay, fine. We'll do things in order.
Okay.
Oh, well, then this is exciting too. This is our wildflower mead. And you're going to notice you really see the honey color coming through in this particular one. This is really honey in the glass. This is just water, honey, and yeast. We do ferment it on some medium toast French oak chips, which gives it a little bit of that oak aging because I like the way the oak brings out and sort of augments the honey aromas in this. But it's a very, very simple mead. And often this is what people are looking for their first try of mead because it is so simple. And, there's no botanicals, no fruits, nothing else interfering with it. And this one is a little stronger. It is a 12% alcohol mead. And this is also made from Wisconsin wildflower honey. And again, from Wisconsin, that's very important to us because what wildflower honey means is the farmer doesn't know where the bees went. It means the farmer turned those bees loose, they pollinated a bunch of fields, they came back, and the honey is just the aggregate of the whole landscape around. Whereas if somebody says they have clover honey, it means that farmer knows he turned his bees loose in a clover field and despite their reputation for hard work and industry, bees will not go a long way if they don't have to. If you turn them loose in a field with lots of things to pollinate, they're going to stay there and do that job. So, 90% of the honey that comes back is definitely from a clover field, and you can tell by the taste and the flavor. And we like to play with different varietals of honey. So we work with clover honey, we work with buckwheat honey, we've worked with cranberry blossom honey. And this is plain Wisconsin wildflower honey. And the other thing important about that, and why I keep emphasizing Wisconsin, is that if you get wildflower honey in Southern California, it will taste like orange blossoms and rosemary and all kinds of beautiful things. And it's wonderful, but it's reflective of that place. Whereas this wildflower honey is reflective of the prairie lands of Wisconsin. And people like to talk about farm to table eating, which I'm a big fan of. And I call this field to glass drinking, where we're really trying to bring it straight from the Wisconsin field into your glass and serve you that flavor of the Wisconsin countryside.
That's fantastic. Yeah, our honey, because we do have hives here on the farm, our honey is mostly clover, because there are many clover fields around here that farmers will use for hay and whatnot. So one of the interesting things is the taste, though, does vary every year. Even though we have the clover fields, there are nuances every year with our honey in flavor. But I actually do really love the clover that comes through. And I love the smell. I mean, I can just smell the honey oozing out of this wildflower mead.
You're making me excited.
I know. I'm excited. I better talk about the chocolate. Fresnel de Ville. I tell people I dream in chocolate. So this one kind of came from 101 Dalmatians, Cruella, Fresnella. And so it's very vanilla bean forward chocolate. It's on the lighter side. It's almost a semi-sweet, like a 58% dark. But the vanilla plays really well in here. It was one of the first truffles that we made. It's been a favorite, through the 10 years that I've been in business. And it ends up having a really nice, creamy, rich center, because this one is a dairy, contains dairy and butter, Wisconsin dairy, Wisconsin butter, absolutely. And that's what makes it really creamy. So this one might be a little bit more rich on your palate when we compare the taste. But I think that we should go ahead and taste the mead.
All right. Well, I've been gazing upon its golden beauty.
It is beautiful, and has a beautiful nose. That honey, I'll tell you what.
That is such a powerful honey nose, and I mean, I almost get a hint of cinnamon when I sniff this glass right from the start without having tasted it. Now I'm curious if that comes through for me at all. I don't know that I get cinnamon, but it's interesting. This honey, for just, again, honey, water, and yeast rested on oak chips, I get a really spicy character off of this honey.
Yeah, on the end, I think I get a little bit of that too. Now, is this?
Yeah, it's hitting me more middle of the palate towards the end.
Now, is wildflower a still or a session? How does that?
Oh, thank you for asking. This is a still mead, which means it's not carbonated at all. And again, this is kind of the one I made. There are a lot of people with some very specific ideas about mead, usually from a sense of history, from reading books, from things like that. And what they're looking for is that pure, unmitigated honey experience.
Yeah, it's delicious.
To touch on the history, I just want to say, a lot of people assume that a simple mead like this is more sort of historically accurate. But when you look at ancient mead recipes and even medieval mead recipes, they often were using grains and fruits and spices and kind of anything they had at hand. They were just trying to make something that tasted good. They didn't have a style book back then.
That would always be our goal, make something that tastes good. Exactly. Let's try something that tastes good. Let's try the vanilla bean chocolate here and see how it settles in with this beautiful mead. Well, the vanilla notes are really strong on this chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't wait to hear,
Mm.
what you think about it with the mead itself. Tasting the mead first and then the chocolate, I'm still that honey, from the mead is still kind of hanging out on my palate.
Yeah, like I'm still getting the meat on the tip of my tongue, even though I just had this really bold chocolatey. It's such a beautiful burst of vanilla. Mm,
Hmm.
that is so beautiful.
I'm picturing flowers out in a field and I'm kind of just running through them.
Well, so I think these are two, this is really interesting because what I kind of think about these two is that they're a natural pairing in that the Frenella obviously is very vanilla forward. And I tend to think of this mead as having some sort of vanilla honey notes when I drink it on its own. Although I find them I love what they do for each other. I actually think the vanilla in this kind of de-emphasizes the vanilla notes in this for me.
Hmm. I agree.
But in a way that I think I focus on the honey a little bit more and I like that.
Hmm. Yep.
Mm. What else are you getting out of that one?
Well, the mead is stronger on my palate from a flavor perspective
Mhm.
after the chocolate coats your tongue a little bit, and then you have the mead again. It seems like the more I take a bite of the chocolate, have some of the mead, and interchange them, the mead is getting stronger
Mhm.
on my palate. Like I'm breathing it out. I'm going, wow, now I'm breathing wildflower, and I'm bringing it in. It's a really great experience.
Well, I think some of that is the oak, and it's why I like resting on French oak chips. I think they enhance some mead flavors and just kind of make them a little bit bolder, make them stand forward a little bit more. I don't feel like it interferes at all, but I feel like it does kind of enhance it. And you're right. I'm amazed because I feel like Frenella is a pretty strong flavor, how this
Yeah.
holds up with it. Is there something texturally? I feel like the Frenella's got something going on too.
Well, what I did was I aged the truffle center for a period of time, so you might get something that feels sugary on
Hmm.
your palate, and
I
that's
like
because
it.
I call it dry aging my truffle center before I cover them. So you're almost getting this little bite of like sugar. It just feels you've got the smoothness and then you've got this little dry sugar in there as well.
Well, what's interesting is it reminds me a little bit of a really well-aged cheddar, how you get those little crystals in the
Yeah.
cheddar. It
Yeah.
reminds me of that, and I really like it. It's a really appealing mouthfeel.
It's nice when you get a little bit of texture. Most of my truffles don't have, texture as far as crunchy, anything additions, because I'm more of a purist. But
Mhm.
that I like that it does, that you notice that, Colleen, because it's kind of surprising, but it's like, oh, that's interesting. What is that?
Well, I like to think about texture because I like to think about mouthfeel because I think mouthfeel is something that's more important in enjoying flavors than people tend to think of.
Mhm.
And it's something that can be really challenging with mead. Mead can be very thin and uninteresting if you aren't very conscious of making sure that you balance flavors, making sure that you balance the acidity in order to sort of arrive at the finished product that then hopefully will coat your tongue and have some mouthfeel as well as some nice honey flavor.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was I enjoy these more and more every time we do these tastings.
I don't know why we recorded this. We really should just do all of these live so that, once a week we're running through these tastings.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be awesome.
All right. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add about this pairing?
Not about that one in particular, no. I feel like we've had good discussion on it. I'm anxious for people to taste this one and just explaining the difference between a session and a still mead. Like I said, I get more education every time we do a pairing.
Well,
So you're
I didn't know before today that chocolate was fermented, so
well, there we go.
I'm super stoked. I learned something today.
Now we can move on to the cherry.
Yeah, the one that I was so eagerly plowing forward with.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. The beautiful rosy hammer smash cherry.
Mm.
Yay. This was the first session mead that we ever made. And part of the reason I was drawn to it is that I was really like, okay, we're the place that celebrates Wisconsin. What's the most Wisconsin thing I could possibly make a mead with? And Door County cherries. It's probably one of the things that we're most famous for. Well, besides cheese and beer. um, but we get these from a farm up on the Door County Peninsula, Sechrist Orchards. They're wonderful. And this is also, in some ways, a very, very simple beverage. It's just honey, water, and yeast. And then after the fermentation is done, we add the cherries in and let the cherries rest with the mead for 2 or 3 weeks to kind of pick up that flavor. And that is a very conscious choice. There are a lot of famous mead makers in the world who always ferment the fruit. And it makes a really good beverage. It's just a different beverage because you're getting the flavor of fermented cherries. And what I really wanted was more of a nice burst of fresh cherry flavor. So after the fermentation is done and the mead is stable, that's when I add the cherries in. It's also a very safe time because fruit tends to carry a lot of wild yeast with it. And you always want to make sure that your fermentation is being accomplished by the yeast that you selected to accomplish it. Unless you're purposefully doing a wild fermentation, which is also a valid choice. But I'm aiming for something that's reproducible. If you buy a bottle of Hammer Smash Cherry today, I hope it tastes the same as the one that you bought 2 years ago. And in order to be commercially reproducible, it's better for me to use our particular yeast. And in our case, we have a house yeast strain that we propagate ourselves, which is very unusual. But my business partner and boyfriend, Peter DeVault, has a real passion for yeast microbiology. So he set us up with a yeast lab. We propagate our own yeast. We've been using it pretty much since we started the meadery in 2012. And we're very, very happy with the nice, clean flavor profile that comes out of that yeast. So we continue to use it. So in any case, we put the cherries in the secondary vessel when it's kind of clarifying and resting so that we're sure that all the fermentation is done and the wild yeast on those cherries isn't going to get in and mess up our nice clean fermentation. So that was a little segue into the science of fermentation, but I find people are often interested in that. So I'll probably sprinkle in a little science as we go. Are we ready to, oh, one more thing. I had mentioned that this is a 6.5% mead. This is also a sparkling mead. When we make meads and we make sparkling meads, we're not trying to make them like champagne sparkly or beer sparkly. We're aiming for more what in the wine industry they call a petulant sparkle, which means it's a little gentler because I don't want the bubbles to sort of blast into your palate and take away some of the flavor. I kind of want them to just sort of give a little interest on your palate and enhance that flavor. So that's the goal.
I love that. And I can smell the fresh cherries in it. I feel like I'm in Door County. The
Yeah.
chocolate is that we're pairing with this, the old fashioned, one of the, this is Wisconsin. We all know what the old fashioned is. And it ended up being my #1 requested chocolate. This particular chocolate is a dark milk chocolate blend. I'm about flavor profile. So just like you're about flavor profile. If I want it to taste like the drink, I kind of have to do a little, a lot of tasting and testing. It's hard work. But tasting chocolate with alcohol and tasting chocolate with cherries and, what chocolate do I think is going to do the actual taste like a cocktail justice. So that's why I have a dark milk chocolate blend. I wanted to sweeten it up a little bit, because if you get an old fashioned sweet, which is so common, it's going to be a little bit sweeter on your palate. This particular old fashioned, I'm a whiskey old fashioned, so it's not brandy. I know there'll probably be plenty of people in Wisconsin that brandish me for that, but it is a whiskey old fashioned. It's got bitters in it. It's got muddled cherry juice from our farm cherry trees in it. And I think that is really playing well with the cherries in your mead. And I think we should just get this tasted up here, because I'm thirsty now.
I already slipped and started sniffing.
No, I saw you. I caught you. Mm. Mm.
Mm. That is basically just boom sherry.
Yep.
Which is why I'm super excited to put it side by side with the classic. And I have to emphasize, I mean, you were spot on with this. Like, these are, I mean, this is Wisconsin, the old fashioned.
No, I don't cook the alcohol off in the old fashioned. I do in the beer, but I do not in the old fashioned. So I want you to taste that alcohol, because it's so Wisconsin that I need to have it there to kind of slap you in the face. And there's a little bit of orange rind on top as well. And all of those are going to play really nicely with this cherry mead.
You know, I love that pairing so much. We've done it before, but I never get tired of it. I mean, I thought this, as I just sipped it, was a total blast of cherries. Then I taste the chocolate, and then I come back to it, and it's like, wow, I didn't know you could magnify the cherry that way. It's incredible.
And then I wanted to say too, that after tasting the chocolate and going back to the mead, that I almost felt like I had more, I know this is a low ABV, but it felt more alcohol in my mouth.
Yeah, I did too.
And that's not a bad thing.
I mean, this is a time when you put two things together with somewhat similar flavors, and it just punches them both up so much.
Yeah, even the truffle, the second taste of the truffle after having the mead changes it. You know, I'm getting a lot more, like, I feel like the orange is popping a little bit in there.
Absolutely. Yeah, the orange definitely just popped for me. It's almost like that cherry is so strong that it brings the orange and the chocolate forward on this.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing. I mean, you can't predict these things.
No, it just keeps changing. It just keeps getting better. I really like that.
Wow. That is two great flavors that play well together. Yeah. And, you know, we do purposefully try to pick different kinds of pairings. I don't think we've ever done a set of 4 pairings where all of them had some of the similarities that these two have. We're always kind of looking at different angles of how to just pick things that amplify each other and complement each other. But they might be coming at it from two very different extremes, or they might be coming at it from together.
That's the fun part.
Yep. Wow. Well, are we ready to have a complete party in their mouth with the the last pairing, which is a particularly bold pairing? This is why
I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about this one. This one surprised me. It surprised
Yeah.
me when I was doing a pre-taste of it and kind of reading your notes and then making my own notes on it. I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, get us started.
All right. So this is definitely one of the boldest, spiciest meads that I make. It is our hibiscus and ginger mead, and it's full strength, 12%. In this case, unlike the wildflower, which was 12%, we do carbonate this one. And it's in part because there are such strong flavors in this one. And I like the way the carbonation works with these bold flavors. So hibiscus is kind of a fruity floral, and the ginger is extremely spicy. And I like the way they both kind of round each other out because they're both pretty strong flavors. And there were a number of ginger meads on the market when I came out with this. And I felt like adding the hibiscus, it both gives it a really beautiful color, but it also just added a little bit more complexity. Otherwise, one ginger mead kind of tastes much like another. But I think that this softens the ginger mead and adds some interest and again, the color, because we eat with our eyes. I like what it does with that as well. It's also worth noting, I just moved my production facility, and the water profile is different that we're using now, than the water profile that we were using, all the first 8 years that we were in business. This is a fairly recent change, this move. This is the first batch that's come out of the new production facility. And at this production facility, unlike the previous one, we have the ability to really tweak the water chemistry a little bit more and dial it in to exactly where we wanted it. And it is amazing. As simple as mead is, water, honey, yeast, each of those elements has such a huge impact on the flavor that comes out. And I think that for whatever reason, the previous water profile was bringing out a kind of tartness in the hibiscus and ginger that tended to, I think, really amplify the hibiscus. And I think this one does not bring out that tartness. And it really, I like the way it allows the two of them to balance a little bit more. So I'm really happy with this. It's a minor change. I suspect if you weren't me and you weren't obsessed with mead, particularly my mead, you might never even notice the change. You might drink them back to back and never think that there was a difference. But I was really pleased that Lisa noticed it in terms of this pairing as well. And it actually influenced what we decided to pair, which we actually have a couple options. Do you want to talk about our couple of chocolate options?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because when you first talked about, there was a tie between two chocolates that you liked with it. And I tried the one and I'm like, it did seem more tart. Like, okay, maybe that's the hibiscus, but then I kind of felt like selection number one was better. And then when you mentioned the water and gave me a sample of your other mead made with the other water, I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's amazing. Just that change.
A
Maybe the
relatively minor
minerality
change.
or something, filters, I don't know, something made a difference. And then I felt the same way as you did, like, okay, there were two chocolates that sounded good with this, and they're both equally good. They
Yeah.
both offer something. And what you may have in your box may be one called Sasquatch, and this is it's dairy free, it's a vegan friendly and gluten free, and I call it Sasquatch. It's farm garden squash. It's Wisconsin maple syrup. It's Wisconsin grown ginger, and it has a really interesting mouthfeel because there's no butter in it. There's coconut oil in it, and that it has a little bit different melting point in your mouth. So the texture you get, you may not taste squash. It really adds a texture and a sweetness to this along with the chocolate. So that I really loved that and how it played with the ginger, in the hibiscus ginger. I was like, wow, this is really nice. I really like that. And it's kind of bold with bold. Ginger is usually, pretty bold. And just the nose of this hibiscus ginger mead is wonderful. I feel like I've got a warm herbal tea when I'm
Mm.
smelling it and I get the nose on it. It reminds me of an herbal tea that I've had that has ginger in it that's just really delicious. So Sasquatch was the first one that spoke to me as far as flavor. And then one of the other chocolates that you mentioned is called Holy Moly, which is also gluten, dairy free, vegan friendly. And it, at first, like I said, was like, I'm getting a little bit of sourness. After you gave me the second sample of the hibiscus ginger, I was like, oh, there's 3 different Mexican peppers in this one. There's raisins, there's cherry, and those peppers don't make the truffle hot. They just add a little fruity heat to it, which doesn't, feel hot on your mouth. And once I tried those together, I was like, wow, now this I really like. So you will have either the holy moly or the squash in your selections to try, and either one of them are equally as good. Which one do you think we should try first, the squash or the mole?
I think we should start with the squash. But I want to say before we get into it, one of the fun things about finding this pairing with mole mole is it's one of my favorite chocolates that Lisa makes. But it wasn't that easy to find the right thing to match with it because it's such a bold flavor. And the Sasquatch is also a very bold flavor. And it's one of those times when you might be tempted to go with a very neutral mead to just kind of augment those bold flavors because you don't want to fight bold flavors to fight together. But this is one of those times, and again, this is what's super fun about these pairings, where we were able to find an incredibly bold flavor that complements these incredibly bold flavors. So with that, oh, I also just want to add, she's right. I do feel like this makes me feel like I'm that responsible person drinking tea on a Sunday afternoon. That's how it makes me feel. It smells like that. And then it makes you feel all warm when you taste it.
Mm.
So yeah, I look at it and I see this rich color that I think is very much the hibiscus coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And I smell it and I get that incredible herbal tea flavor coming through. And then I sip it and that is a nice bold balance of spice. So now do I get to try the chocolate with it?
Let's try the chocolate with it.
All right, I'm going for the Sasquatch. Mm.
Mm.
Mm. I love the mouthfeel of this one too.
Yeah, it's the mouthfeel is kind of gentle, but the flavors are bold.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the ginger, the ginger is what makes it bold.
Yeah. Ooh, that kicks the ginger.
It does.
I mean, it takes the ginger and the hibiscus and ginger up a notch for
It
sure.
does. And it's interesting that it just doesn't taste sour. That sour sense that I had from the first sample. It actually tastes now like tartness from hibiscus and not sourness, which is
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah. Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Second bite of the truffle, the ginger is even more powerful, I think.
Yeah. They really allow the ginger to play. But there's some texture in there, I think, from the squash.
Yep, that's from the squash.
Yeah,
Yep.
that I just really love. I like that. I like how that coats my tongue. I like how that gives me some interest in the flavor. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I can't believe how much stronger that brings out the ginger. It's really
I
incredible.
agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm literally breathing it in and out. It's like ginger in, ginger out. That's what I'm
Mhm.
getting once I keep tasting the chocolate and then the meat, and the ginger just keeps getting stronger.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. Oh my goodness, shall we do the hole mole?
Yes, make sure you cleanse your palate, folks.
Oh yes. And I apologize, folks. I think it's a shame that you can't try both of these, but at least you'll get one of each of these in order to try.
Mm. I just feel like I've got peppers and raisins and cherries and hibiscus and ginger running around in my mouth right now. It's just everything is there. And it's almost like they're all kind of saying hello together and not going, me first, me second, me third, that just is just a really nice.
Well, I think, and
Even though like the ginger's like, hello, I want to be first. But you can taste all of those other flavors that are in the holy moly.
the hole mole, and I think it might be, maybe it's the raisin, maybe it's the cherry. I think it draws out the fruit and the hibiscus more. And it's almost like, to the extent that it's playing with the ginger, I think the peppers and the ginger are bringing out some heat together. It
Mm-hmm.
plays really well together. And I feel like the cherry and the raisin is really like kind of pushing the hibiscus forward in a way that I enjoy.
Yeah, I get a little bit more tartness the more I kind of go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
Little bit more tartness, but I like it. If you're
Mhm.
familiar with the flavor of a bit of hibiscus, if you've never had like hibiscus tea or something with hibiscus in it, it tends to have a beautiful red color and a little bit on the tart side. So I
Mhm.
recommend if you've never had hibiscus to try it in a tea. It's wonderful.
Mm. I just love the way the heat of the peppers and the ginger play. And I really like the way it's pushing the hibiscus to play a little bit stronger role in this version. It's so good,
Mm, I love it.
but it still tastes really balanced. It's like I'm noticing all these flavors individually, but it's really, really balanced.
Yeah, no, this is, yeah, we did it. We did a good job, Colleen. I think we did really good on this, and I'm super excited about this. And
I can't quite
I'm
stop
excited.
eating these and drinking these. So yes.
I can't wait for people to try the tasting. I'm super excited about that. And if anybody has any questions about the chocolate, feel free to contact me directly. It's just the name of my business, rootschocolates@gmail.com. If you have questions or there's something you feel like, I don't know, I didn't get that taste, and you want to provide some feedback, hey, we love hearing this stuff. And I think Colleen would be equally as open to getting some questions.
Yeah, I really love it when people get in touch and have questions, follow-up questions. I'm always happy to help answer people's questions about mead, about history, about how to make mead, about what they were tasting, about how to set up their own tasting for their family, things like that. And you can, I think the easiest way to reach me would be info@bosmeadery.com. That'll go right to my inbox. So
Yay.
please do follow up. We would really enjoy that. But as we kind of look to the future, what do you got going on, Lisa? It's a strange time in the world for small business owners. What have you got on the horizon?
Yeah, it certainly is. I usually kick out some seasonals this time of year because when we get around holiday time, I'll try something new. I've got elderberry from the farm in my boxes right now, eggnog right now. I'm trying to kick out some new flavors. I'm working on a new type of chocolate bar that I hope to announce. And, depending upon how my busiest time of year, we'll see how that goes right now. If it's not as busy, then I'll be definitely working on some new projects that I'll be excited about announcing. And I always announce those on my Instagram or Facebook, which is Roots Chocolates. If you just seek it out, you'll find me. How
Cool.
about you?
Well, as I mentioned, we just moved into this new production facility. And we're kind of just excited about getting more of our classic flavors back in stock. It's been a little while, but for longtime fans of Bos, and I know that this is going to speak to your heart too, Lisa. I'm super excited because we're about to start a batch of our Equinox mead, which is our spring release. which is rosé grape juice, clover, honey, and a little bit of lavender. And the Hammer Smash Cherry is definitely the flagship, but I think perhaps due single-handedly to the passion of one of our bartenders, Equinox comes a real close second. He's been our most long-standing bartender, and he loves Equinox. I swear, little birds fly out of the sky and land on Jason's shoulders when he's drinking a glass of Equinox. It's kind of ridiculous. But as a result of, I think, his evangelism behind the bar, it's absolutely one of everybody's favorites. I guess it's not just Jason. It actually is also one of my favorites. It's quite a light, crisp, delicious beverage. So we're happy to have that coming, and just kind of happy to get back to a little more normal footing with making that move, and some of the interruptions of COVID. We're just really excited to sort of beginning to see something normal. Things will be a little quiet here at the tasting room this winter, but we can sort of see normalcy coming back to us, and we're excited about that. And excited about the new production facility, because I really do love what we're doing with the water.
Yeah. Now, will you be doing tours at the new facility once things normalize a little bit?
I don't think that we will, because it's fairly distant from where our tasting room is. And so just logistically, it'll be a little bit hard to do. So that's going to be more of a just pure working facility. And then our tasting room will continue to be the place where we host people and walk them through tastings and have live music and things like that. And I am proud to say, we feel like music is a big part of the experience when people come to Bos Mead Hall. And we were awarded the Madison Music Association Award for Best Local Live Music Venue for 2020. And that was a real near and dear to our heart, very sweet thing. And we appreciate the recognition. We love the musicians who play here. And we look forward to supporting live music in 2021.
Well, I look forward to coming and listening to some live music. I've not yet heard you play.
Oh,
Colleen. I know you are a musician, so I'm looking forward to that.
well, I'll hunker down and play my mandolin this winter so that we can put on a show next summer.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping we didn't do any tours and tastings on the farm this year. I'm hoping next year, as things normalize, that we'll, we do tours and tastings as long as you schedule ahead. So hopefully we can do one out here on the farm as well, another tasting.
That would be great. I would love that.
Fantastic.
That's a fun time.
Yeah. I think we've covered all of our bases. Is there anything else we need to add that you can think of?
I think we covered everything.
We're super excited for everybody out there to taste this.
Yeah, we're really excited. We welcome your feedback. You can, if you want to, order this for family and friends, we're going to have this going probably all winter long, up through, at least through Valentine's Day.
Sounds good.
All right, Lisa. Well, I'm sure I'll get to see you soon.
Yep, looking forward to it. Looking forward to everybody tasting your mead and our chocolate, and just being happy.
Yes, thank you, folks. I hope that you are celebrating and enjoying and really got some joy out of this experience.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your support.
Bye.